Hey, this is Devon Shepard, and you're watching the TV Writer Podcast.
Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for script writing information in print and on the web. My name is Gray Jones, and I want to welcome you to the TV Writer Podcast. This is episode 60, and today's episode features an interview with writer-producer Devon Shepard. Devon Shepard is a very accomplished TV writer in Hollywood. He's written everything from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air through MADtv, Weeds, Everybody Hates Chris, and tons of stuff in between. And he's got lots of great stories to share. He's actually written in several different genres, including your straight-up comedy, sketch comedy, and more dramatic shows as well. And so you're going to love his interview. We're going to get to that in a second. I did want to mention that this is actually episode 60 of the podcast. There have been 60 of these video podcasts, and if you're thankful for them, I would invite you to please consider a donation to my upcoming move to Los Angeles. One really cool thing is that there's reward levels. If you want, you can advertise your product or even yourself, your Twitter handle, your Kickstarter campaign for as little as $50. There's script consultations and lots more will be added along the way. And also, I do want to mention, once I do get to LA, how cool would it be to actually go behind the scenes and have in-person video interviews at the major studios? Look into the writers' rooms. Help me get there, and that will come. Go to tvwriterpodcast.com and click on the support link at the top to find out more about how you can help. But right now, on to my interview with Devon Shepard. Enjoy. This is Gray, and I'm here with writer-producer Devon Shepard. How you doing, Devon?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
I know you've got some exciting stuff that you're working on and have worked on for quite a number of years, and I just can't wait to hear your story. And I know particularly the first IMDb credit you have is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I know I just love that show, and so I want to hear, when did you get the writing bug? Where did you grow up? And how did it get to that point where you're writing on really a mega hit show like that?
It was crazy. I'm a little bit of, growing up in South Central, there was all the trappings of sports and all that. And I did all of those things and whatever. But I had a weird fascination with television at a very early age. And it started with, I had to probably be 7, 8 years old, started, believe it or not, with All in the Family. And I had I didn't really understand the material, but what was fascinating to me was how people can write something so how did writers can write that material and know people laugh at that point. It was like magic to me. Like, how do you know that? And I remember used to looking behind the TV and all kind of crazy stuff, trying to get into that world and figure it out.
Yeah. And
it just become a weird obsession for me. And so I kind of, like most kids, I kind of pushed that real dream down and try to do what my parents wanted me to be, which was an engineer. Mm-hmm. And I ended up graduating, going to Cal State Northridge for an engineering degree. And I was sitting in my statistics class in my sophomore year, and I was just bored as hell. I just got up and walked out and said, I'm done with this. And I went over to my counselor and changed my major to television, film, and production.
Wow.
And I never told my parents.
Oh, no.
So they didn't find out the graduation. And, they said, the engineer students, stand. And I didn't get up. My dad was looking like, what? Why aren't you standing? Why aren't you sitting with the rest of the kids? Like, what the hell's going on? So when radio, television, film was announced, and I stood up and I looked at him, gave him a thumbs up. He just shook his head like, oh, man.
Wow.
So that's where it started. I graduated. I bumped around for a little bit. And my story is unique in terms of how I got in. I was an out-of-work PA at the time. Mm-hmm. I had just graduated, working with Dennis Miller's show he had on Channel 5 at the time. It was canceled. I had no work, and I was also struggling stand-up. So what I would do is I would go to my best friend, had a barber shop on 43rd and Crenshaw in the hood. I would go and I would sit over there and crack jokes on people who sat in the chair working on my material, because the Cognac Theater was right around the corner. So I would work on my material and then walk around the corner and go do 15 minutes. And one day, Rob Edwards, who ended up doing Princess and the Frog. He wrote that. A guy named Denny Richburg, who's a writer, producer as well. And Kenny Snyder, who happened to be Will Smith's cousin, came into the barbershop.
Wow.
And Rob was just sort of this kind of square guy from Syracuse, New York. And, you had the button up and the sweater and the penny loafers, and I laid it to his ass something terrible that day. And he loved it and thought I was funny and said, you should come write for my show. And at the time, the show was, my first show was Out All Night with Patti LaBelle and Morris Chestnut and those guys. So he told me to come on and learn writing. And I didn't want to do it. So I said no.
Really?
And I said no because I didn't understand it. I was like, I want to be a stand-up. I want to be a director. I want to do all this other stuff. And he said to me, hey, man, there's 1,000 stand-ups. And then at this particular time, we're talking about 91, 92. He's like, it's not a lot of black writers.
Right.
So he was like, you can carve out your niche without a whole lot of competition. And I thought about it, and I said, okay. And the funny part, he said, write a spec script and send it to me. And I didn't know what a spec script was. So he said it's a sample of your writing. So I just went home and I just wrote 3 scenes from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, 3 random scenes that had no connection to nothing, just 3 random scenes. And because I said, well, it's a sample of my writing,
Wow.
And I gave it to Rob, and he said, this is not what the spec script is, but he said, just based on how I wrote my scenes and stuff, he knew I understood structure and storytelling and how to set up a joke and pay it off. And so they invited me to come be a writer's trainee over at Out All Night, and that's how it started. So I did Out All Night, and then I went from Out All Night to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then I've been working 23 years since then.
Wow, you're right. That is unconventional.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Wow. So my goodness. I mean, you're starting out Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, you worked with the Wayans brothers and you did MADtv, Cedric the Entertainer. I mean, you worked on some crazy shows. Tell me about maybe just some of the signposts along the way. So some of the things that you learned and experiences along the way.
I learned a lot of interesting things along the way, and the one that sticks out to me the most is a lot of people don't have a great work ethic. And that was the thing that stuck out to me, because it's like people, and I've only learned it because I was so happy to get in, and the way I got in, look, I was plucked out of a barbershop on 43rd Crenshaw. So for me, it was like, oh, they don't let the wrong dude in here because I ain't leaving. And so once I got in, I just really worked hard, and people saw my work ethic, but I noticed other people didn't work as hard, and they almost felt like they were entitled to being there. And I would watch people fall by the wayside. There's people that I started out with aren't writing anymore, or completely out the business. And I always said I never wanted to be that person that talked about when he used to write in television. I always wanted to be relevant, and so because of those signposts that I've seen other, people fall by the wayside and all that kind of stuff, they get cocky and they never elevate their craft. I still to this day go to writer workshops and stuff like that. Not a lot of people still do that. And partly it's because of fear, and the other side is because I love what I do. So I have those 2 things working for me, but I just noticed a lot of people that I was close to, or that I just knew from afar, didn't maintain that work ethic. In comedy and storytelling, it changes every generation. There's always a new thing to discuss, a new topic that's brewing, a new social issue that's permeating our society, a new way to think of how to do things. Technology changes how you do things. So the world is constantly evolving, and in your storytelling, I feel like has to evolve along with it. Same thing that we thought was funny in the 90s, people don't think is necessarily funny in 2000. Certain styles that was funny, 10, 15 years ago in terms of performance and comedy, what they expect out of their actors and comedians, has shifted to something else. People want a little more edgier comedy. Some people want a little more social commentary in a comedy nowadays. You have this gay rights issues and all these things that are permeating society right now. So people want you to kind of respond to that. And that's the thing about Twitter and Facebook and that sort of thing. people having these discussions about various different things, and they want to see that reflected, I think, in the storytelling. And if it's not there, they turn off.
Well, I remember reading a story. I can't remember the reference. I think it was even on the Apple website about Everybody Hates Chris and how they're really pushing the envelope technology-wise in how they were doing the show. Yeah.
It was unique in how, and you got to give all the credit, I believe, Ali Leroy. He had a real vision and a real smart way of how to shoot that show efficiently. We were never late. And you talk about a lot of setups. To this day, to be honest with you, I don't know how they got it done. But we have probably 20, 23 setups per show.
Wow.
Single camera. And they were never behind, never late, always on time. And it looked great. It just looked bad. And so he was on some groundbreaking things in terms of production and being more efficient. And I try to learn as much as I can on that side, being a showrunner now, how to move efficiently. And one of the things my dad always taught me, old school parents, work harder, not smarter. And I live by that model as well. And, and Ali definitely lived by that. I mean, he did some really smart things just with the look of the show and how it was edited and how it was turned around in such a quick amount of time. It was fascinating to watch. And it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. It was easy.
Wow. So now was it because I think they were one of the first ones, like now everybody's shooting tapeless, but I think they were one of the first shows that was starting to do tapeless at the time.
Well, it was one of the first black shows. They usually didn't let us do that.
Yeah.
Let me take that back. They wouldn't let us shoot film. We were always video. What Everybody Hates Chris allowed us to be was single camera. There was I don't believe, if recollection serves me, I really don't believe there was another single camera black show out there, period. And so Chris sort of became the first predominantly black show that was single camera, meaning it had locations and movement and exteriors, and it was shot more like a film and less like a multi-camera sitcom. And that was groundbreaking in a lot of ways. But they generally didn't allow, black shows, to a lot of executives wasn't worth the money and production to do so. We didn't have the ratings, as they would say, we didn't have the ratings to support that kind of production. But Chris Rock, being who he is at the time, was able to kind of force their hand and to give him a show that looked and felt like a lot of the other shows out there. And that in itself was a great, small thing, but it's a big thing at the same time, and that was groundbreaking.
And so tell me, you did a bunch of things like sketch kind of comedy and that kind of thing, and then some of your more recent shows, things like Weeds and Crash. You're getting into different types of writing. Tell me about that transition.
It's growth. It's I equate it like that. So the younger you are, you can do multi-camera and sketch because you're silly and you think you know everything. And those kind of genres are really for the dumb, edgy, funny people. When people don't know no better. We don't have the common sense to know you can't say that or do that.
Yeah.
That's what, and for me, I'll say this to this day, MADtv hands down was my single most best experience in television.
Wow.
And the reason I said that because it was the hardest, because I was the only black writer there for a number of years. And I've never done sketch at that time. And that first day I got there, they just threw me in. And I had to write a sketch for Aries, and I didn't know Aries well. And we were the only two black guys thrown into this room. And we just made a decision, said, we're going to do what we want to do. We started writing, and the thing was, because we were the only black artists there was Deborah Wilson and Phil Lamar as well, who were actors. I was the only black writer. We had to convince them every week to trust us and do something because they had no real idea about culture and our point of view and the things that we wanted to talk about. So what it did was it sharpened my instincts to know what's funny, because if I had to walk in that room and fight with these guys, I had to be sure too. And what that taught me is, knowing when it's worth the fight and not worth the fight. There was days I go, I don't know about this one. But then there were days I go, no, we have to do this one. And 9 times out of 10, it turned out to be the best decision to allow us to do it. So I gained a lot more confidence and sharpened my instincts comedically, and having, I feel like, a good sense of what's funny and how it's going to get a response versus what's not funny. And having to be honest, the toughest part is being honest with yourself. You have to go, oh, this sucks.
Mm.
You have to be able to do that. And nobody, especially a writer, right? Because he's a principal. Everything we write is gold, baby. But you have sometimes you got to sit back and go, ooh, nah, I can't. I got stuff I never let nobody see. Are you kidding? But I keep it around to remind myself of consistently working, because the train always moves, and if you're not in shape and keeping up, you can get left behind. And I had no intention of being left behind. So after I did MADtv and I got older, I got married, I started having kids, my thinking started to change. And I saw the way comedy was shifting, and I didn't like it, to be honest with you. It was quick jokes. There was no humor.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a lot of African American stuff. It was just set up joke, and wacky stuff. And it wasn't, and I was going away from that. Again, I was going back to my All in the Family roots, my Norman Lear roots, where, I really admire how he wrote his characters, how he can develop his characters and have a couch and 2 chairs and 2 acts. And you're never bored, and you're never worried about, how come they're still sitting in these chairs? You were engaged for all 27 minutes.
Mm.
A lot more time back then.
Yeah.
You never turned the channel. You was engaged.
Yeah.
And that comes from having well-crafted, well-developed characters that were so defined that they had unique perspectives, that they didn't cross each other. You couldn't take a line from Meathead and give it to Archie and vice versa. They were very distinct characters. So I've always wanted to get back to that type of writing. And Genji Cohan, who I knew from Fresh Prince days,
mm-hmm.
and she and I used to sit and play dominoes, and we would exchange culture stories. Because, growing up in South Central, it was a very South Central was very polarized. It's just black people. And you might get a few Mexicans and Hondurans floating through. But primarily black. The only people that was white were cops. So I had no real experience with Jewish people and different ethnic groups because, until I went to college, that wasn't my makeup. Mm-hmm. And so we would have these interesting conversations just about the Jewish culture and black culture over a game of dominoes. Mm-hmm. And we became really close. So when she had Wheat, and you look at Wheat, Conrad in the show is Conrad Shepard. Mm-hmm. He's named after me. He's based on me.
Wow.
And I got the script, and it came without a title page. My agent said, you should read this. It's pretty good. And I read it, and I called him immediately and said, yo, I need to get on this show.
Wow.
He goes, do you know Genji Cohan? I said, do I know Genji? Set the meeting up. So we go do the meeting, and it was like old times. We laughed, and she looked at me and said, can you write this? I said, yes, I can write this. And we laughed, and she hired me, and I was there 3 seasons.
Wow.
And that was a great experience as well. She was an interesting writer because she got bored easily. Mm-hmm. And then she would make us do games. And she'll say, hey, in your script, I want you to take this apple and somehow carry this apple through the whole show.
Oh, that's great. I like that.
So, or I'm going to start the word with whatever word you end your scene with, you have to start the next scene with. So if you end the word with something like crap, you got to start the next scene with crap. Like, she would give us these little things to do. And what that did was really sharpen and hone your writing skills. And Genji wasn't afraid to dig ourselves in the hole. If you watch Weed, every season, it's some sort of cliffhanger. And we would dig ourselves in the hole, and we wouldn't know how to get out of it. And she'd say, well, we got the whole summer to figure it out. And she'd say, bye, and that would be the end of it. And instead of enjoying your summer, see, her mind games were great, because instead of enjoying your summer, you sitting around all summer going, how the hell we going to get out this damn?
That is great.
So just the mental gymnastics she had us go through was another arsenal I was able to add to my writing game. And so I really enjoy writing character stuff. So that's how I ended up doing Weeds, and then Crash, and then House of Lies. And because those were things that were like, wow, as an African-American writer, we don't get an opportunity to write like that. Mm-hmm. And so I just took full advantage of that opportunity to be able to do that. And now trying to do something similar over at BET with the show I have over there now, trying to write more character-driven stuff. And, hopefully people would dig it.
Well, that's a wonderful evolution. I mean, you've been able to do a lot of different styles and genres along the way, but progress in a really natural way.
Yeah, well, I believe this. I always, because what I hated too, and early on in the business, where I realized, like, if you wrote comedy, that's all you can write, or if you wrote drama, that's all you can write. And I like comedy, I like drama, I like sketch, I like sci-fi. If I'm a writer, I should be able to write whatever I want to write. Because I watch a variety of different things. I listen to a variety of different music. So for you to tell me I only have to write one thing means you're closing me off. You cutting my opportunity short. And I just never subscribed to that. I always believe, like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do.
Very, very cool.
And that's how I feel to this day. I just do what I want to do. If I feel like writing a drama, I write one. If I want to write a comedy, I write one. If I want to write a sci-fi, I write one. Who's to say I can't? I'm a storyteller.
And so are you still writing spec scripts? Are you writing pilots? Like in between your projects, are you trying to get your own shows off the ground?
Yeah, I have one here at BET now.
Mm-hmm.
Second generation with the Damien and Craig Wayans, because they're the nephew of Keenan and Marlon and Shaw. And it's sort of, we wanted to go for like an Entourage type of vibe with that. So I'm doing that now. We'll start shooting that in October. Very cool. And then I got stuff I'm going out with. I write specs still, because I think you keep your instrument sharp, Sometimes you got an idea, I write specs. I'm writing shorts. Directed one a couple years ago, got into a couple of festivals. Getting ready to write another short, direct that at the end of the year. And then I'm going out pitching with various people. Got something with Mike Epps I'm going out with the next couple of weeks and a couple other people. And, I don't stop. I just keep going. I go right to the next thing. I'm like Sam Jackson. I just go right to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me a little bit about your influences. I know you talk a lot about Norman Lear, but what do you point to as, say, your inspiration for the writing that you do?
My inspiration?
Well, like either inspiration or people that have helped you along the way, or examples that you've looked toward.
It's two people that made me, I would say, sort of put me in this space and got me passionate about what I do. And it's simple. It's always the two easy answers: Norman Lear and John Hughes. Those are my two dudes I look up to. I aspire to be. The material that they wrote had a profound effect on me. Ferris Bueller. Probably was the single most thing that changed. Still one of today, hands down, my favorite movie of all time.
Oh yeah.
And it was simple and complicated at the same time. And so I loved anything John Hughes did. He wrote teen angst better than anyone at that particular time in that particular decade. And Norman Lear, just because, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be interested in doing this thing at all.
Wow.
It started with him, and his vision and the fact that he wasn't afraid to say things. He wasn't afraid to write real people. Like the people you wrote then, you have a real hard time writing those people now. And I'm talking real complex people. Yeah. People who may or may not be racist or stereotypical, have an uncomfortable point of view or an uncomfortable perspective, and having those uncomfortable conversations on television and still being poignant and still being funny. It takes a skill to do that. And so I've always just been inspired by that show and all the shows that he's done from that to Maude. And you gotta look at it like that. He wrote one show and been able to spin off series off one show. Maude, Good Times, The Jeffersons. Oh yeah. That all came from one show, All in the Family.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And to be able to write characters that you can spin off like that was an interesting and unique thing that I hadn't seen at that time. Although I was only 7, 8 years old, but I hadn't seen it at that time. It inspired me.
Well, and speaks to the strength of the characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, so speaking about John Hughes, have you ever considered getting into features, or is TV your thing, or what do you think about that? Because you mentioned directing a short film.
Yeah, I sold some movies that unfortunately didn't get made. The big one, I tell this story. I went in and I had an opportunity. They was going to do Good Times, the movie, and I went in there and I pitched the hell out of it and sold it. I did this.
Oh, you did so?
I did sell it, but we didn't make it because of a lot of discrepancy with authorship and that sort of thing. But I pitched that and the sequel and one meeting and sold it right there in the room. So, you know, and that, when that didn't go, that hurt my feelings. So I kind of shied away from film for movies, but I'm getting back into it now. I got a couple of things from scripts actually out there right now in consideration, and I'm getting ready to write another movie probably next year. So I'm putting my foot back in the film world.
Very, very cool. Well, as we're getting close to the end of our time here, but we always end with breaking in tips. And I know you've talked a little bit about having a really strong work ethic. But beyond that, if somebody wants to get into TV writing right now, what advice would you give them?
As a writer, well, two things. Write. Never stop writing. And don't be afraid to take criticism. Because most of the time when people are giving you notes, it's really to help the script. It sucks. but you have to learn to kind of go, okay, maybe this person has helped me. And in taking notes, take the notes that you think are actually going to help the script. If the notes are not going to help your script or move you in the direction you want to go in, don't take the note. Yeah. And then secondly, find your way onto a set from being a PA to whatever you got to do to get on the set. Get on the set. That's the best way you're going to get access. That's the best way you're going to get experience in how it works and be able to see it up close. And it's the best way that you're going to be able to have an opportunity to see scripts being developed from outline to, shooting. And you have possibly a direct connection to getting to some of these writers and picking their brain and talking to them. Like, I don't mind talking to young writers. I do it all day. But I will say this to all the young writers. When you ask people to read your scripts, you have to be patient, because what people don't understand, even though writers are working in the profession, they're also trying to get their own stuff done as well. Whether it's pitching shows or writing movies or finishing scripts or whatever. So although your idea might be the best idea in the world, a lot of times we're also working on an idea we think is the best idea in the world, which is our own idea. So all I'm saying is just be aware of that. If somebody's sitting on to read it, just be patient. And that goes a long way. You know, it's not that writers don't want to help other writers. It's not a writer I haven't met that's not willing to help another writer. It's always about give us time to figure it out, because we're also working on our own stuff. We try to get our own show too. So just have a little bit of patience and find your way onto a set. I don't care how you do it. It can be illegal. I don't care how you do it.
Well, actually, to be honest, I've literally heard stories. I talked to somebody recently who literally was he saw a film shooting, and he just drove up, parked his car, and he walked up to them and just started watching until they said, "Why don't you come help out?"
But you have to do it, and it's the way you do it too. Yeah. Just, even if you did that, don't go up and be obnoxious. But like it sounded like that guy went in and just played it real cool, and eventually they was like, "Hey." People respect that, because here's the thing: it's tough getting in. There's not, for the exception of my story, I haven't heard a lot of stories where it was an easy journey to get inside. And all of us been there. Even before they snatched me out the barbershop, I was a PA. I was sneaking on lights. I was doing the same stuff too. We all do it. We all do it. And so don't think like you're weird because you want to do it. Do that. Do it, and just be smart and be a little more professional about how you do it. Once you be smart about how you handle it. Don't bombard people. Kind of play it a little bit easy and more relaxed, because that's the thing too. We don't like skittish people. Like when you're skittish, it's like what's going on. But if you're cool and you're calm and you got a nice personality and disposition, nobody's more narcissistic than Hollywood people. We love talking about ourselves, as you can tell. I'm keeping babbling on this interview. So once you start talking to these people and engaging them, they'll start talking to you and telling you everything you need to know, and eventually something good may come out of it, or they may point you in a direction that may help you. But it starts with having that tenacity to want to be on those sets. And figuring out how to get, because there's no manual or no instruction I can say, do this and this will happen. This town is you just don't know. And it's different for everybody. I got snatched out of a barbershop on 43rd and Crenshaw right before the riot. So,
yeah,
that's how I got in. And so that's not everybody's story. It's not going to happen that way. And so, you have to really want to do it because it's a tough thing to write. Because we was just saying this in the writer's room yesterday. To be a writer, all you really get is negativity. You very rarely get positive feedback. It's always negative because somebody didn't like a joke, didn't like a story, didn't like a character, didn't like your perspective, don't like your writing, don't like, it's always a critic. You're constantly criticized all day long. And way more criticism than positive remarks. And you have to be steadfast and strong and confident in your ability to know how to navigate through all that criticism.
Yeah.
And still remain in the game and still not lose your voice. A lot of people succumb to, well, this is what they're doing, I'll just do what everybody else is doing. But when you do that, you don't stand out. And those are people who wash out pretty quickly because they don't establish their own voice. They're just doing something to get by and to keep a job. You have to kind of do something that's going to set yourself apart. And that's usually when it comes from somebody who discovered their own voice and have their own perspective and stay true to that.
Yeah.
That's what makes a good writer. So, thank you.
Well, that is a great place to end up, and I really appreciate you taking the time. Some wonderful, wonderful tips, and I'm really inspired by your journey. And wow, just a great career you've had, and I wish you all the best and lots more success.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much, Devon.
You got it.
Okay, bye-bye. Hosted by Gray Jones, the TV Writer Podcast is brought to you by Script Magazine and ScriptMag.com, the leading source for script writing information in print and on the web.